Jasper. It's chilly here. Hope y'all are staying warm. All right, let's get started. We are going to need some tools for this project, obviously. So first we're going to start with this half round nose, half nylon jaw. I use this guy quite often. It's great for doing loops and not marring up like the typical round nose pliers do. So I use them whenever I can. You're also going to need these flat head pliers and these round nose pliers. My flush cutters, this has the concave side and the flat side. The flat side is great for cutting flat ends. You don't want the other side as much. These are my chain nose pliers. You'll need a pair of those. I'm also going to use a cut burr. The cut burr is great for smoothing off ends of wires. So I'm going to use that in this project. I use this quite often. I'm also going to use this crochet hook as a mandrel. This one is 5 millimeters. And so I'll use the end that doesn't have the hook, obviously. I've also pre-prepared these lengths of wires. This is 20 gauge copper wire, and I've cut them at about 13 centimeters in length. And then I've also made sure that I've got them all smoothed out so that they're nice and straight and ready to go. Also, I'm going to use this 16 gauge length of wire that's about 6 centimeters long. This will be used for my clasp later on. So I'll set that aside. And I'm also going to use some 18 gauge wire. This is what I'll make my jump ring for the clasp to attach to. So how cold is it where y'all are at? It's freezing here in Texas and we're not used to it. Okay, so the next couple of items we need for this project are some Jasper beads. Here I have 9 6 millimeter and 9 4 millimeter Jasper beads. So here you can see them. They're just a red-brown Jasper bead. I like using these a lot with copper. The color just goes so well with copper. What type of beads and colors do you like using with copper if you're making wire jewelry like this? I'm always curious to learn what others use and if there's anything new that I could add to my list of fun things that I have. Okay, so here I'm grabbing a piece of that 20 gauge wire that I cut at 13 centimeters. I only end up using 7 of these at the end, so you don't really need 9. It just depends on how long you want to make your bracelet. I'm going to measure at about 2 centimeters at the end of this wire, and with my flat nose pliers, I'm going to get right there at 2 centimeters, and then I'm going to bend a nice little L or a 90-degree angle here. And I like using the flat nose pliers for this because it gets a nice corner, as you can see there. And now I'm going to grab one of my 4 millimeter Jasper beads, and I'm going to pop that right onto the end of that short tail of the wire. Like so. Now I'm going to take the long tail of this wire and I'm just going to wrap around my bead, trying to leave a little bit of space around that bead. And you'll see the reasoning why I do that here in just a few minutes. And I'm going to just try to wrap this around as neatly as possible, making it as round as possible. This sometimes can take a little bit of time and a little bit of getting used to and adjustment, so don't rush through it. And then I'm going to wrap it past where it started and back up toward the top of where the short little end is. Just like so. And then I'm going to make some little adjustments there. And now this little tail, I want it to be lined up right there at the top. And I'm going to take my round nose pliers and right at the top where that short end comes out, I'm going to grab that longer end of wire. And I move that little tail out of the way a bit because I'm going to make a loop here with the other longer tail. So as you can see, I'm grabbing it just right where that wire comes out of the bead. I'm going to wrap it around the nose there. And then I'm going to readjust my pliers if that's all I have, or in my case, I'm grabbing the half nylon jaw and half round nose pliers. So I'm going to put the round nose part into the loop because I don't want to mar up that top part of the wire. So I put it in there. And then I'm going to grab that top part and finish wrapping that wire around. Like that. And then I've wrapped it all the way down around to the bottom of my piece. And then I'm going to bend that little small tail back up straight like this. So basically you want everything nice and straight. That tail end comes up through the middle of the loop and the longer tail ends at the bottom center of the piece. As you can see there. And now I'm going to bend it up straight in front of that. And you want to make sure you bend it up on the same side that that little tail end is coming out as well. If you do it on the other side, when we go to end this wire, one side's going to be on one side and the other's going to be on the other side. You want them all on the same side. And you'll see here in just a minute. So I'm taking that tail end and I'm putting it through the last two wraps around that bead, or the only two wraps around that bead. I'm putting it in between them and then I'm pulling it around. I'm wrapping around that last wire on that side and I'm pulling it nice and tight. Like that. I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and do a little adjustment here. So I felt like my wire wasn't quite round enough there. And then I'm going to pull this just a little bit tighter and snug it up. And there you can see that one's done. And now I'm going to wrap this smaller tail end around the first wrap around the bead. So I'm going to pull that out, or pull that bead and the first wrap out away from the piece, so that I can wrap this around. I'm taking this wire here, the short tail end, I'm going to push that bead down in there and bend it up to start with. And then I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and grab the wire right there close to that first wrap and wrap that tail end around the top of my round nose pliers, just to give it a little bend right there. Then I'm going to take this tail end and I'm going to put it between that bead in the first wrap and the second wrap, and then push it behind the piece there. And this is a little bit tricky, and if you need to, you can always have a longer piece of wire to begin with, so this is a little easier to grab that wire through. I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to help me pull that through right here. And as you can see, I've got it pulled through over the top. And now I'm going to take my flush cutters and cut most of that wire off, leaving just enough to be able to tuck in around that wrap right above the bead. So here I'm cutting that off. And I'm grabbing my chain nose pliers. I'm going to bend that toward that bead. And now I'm going to tuck that down in there. And there you can see it's nice and tucked in there. I'm going to straighten it up a bit if I need to. And now you can see that it's all wrapped around that wire. So now I'm going to take the 6mm Jasper bead and thread it over the other longer tail end of the wire. So that looks like that. And it's looking so cute so far. So everything's all kind of lined up in a line there. And I'm going to take this tail end and I'm going to bend it toward the back like that at about a 90-degree angle. And then grab my round nose pliers and we are going to make a loop here. So the loop is going to be from the back to the front like this. And then I'm going to grab my handy dandy half round nose and half nylon flathead pliers. And then I'm going to pull that to the back like that. And there's that loop. Now we're going to leave this loop open like that and then make our next piece. So here we have 2 links already made. I had already made one. And I'm going to show you how we're going to attach these. So the open loop is going to attach through the closed loop. And you need to do it from the back side like this. If you try to do it from the front side, your pieces, one's going to be backward and the other's going to be forward. So there you can see how they're both facing front, just like that. And these links are mirror images of each other, and I'll explain more about that here in just a minute. So here I'm going to flip my piece over and grab that little tail end, and we're going to wrap that around this last piece here. And we're going to do one full wrap around. I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and I'm just going to press that last wrap in tighter and closer around that last little wire there. And then I'm going to flush cut the tail off of there. You want to do that as close as possible. And then with my chain nose pliers, I'm going to snug that little tail up in there. And there we go. And there are my first 2 links together. And you can get the idea of what it's going to look like. So here I've made a bunch more. There's 5 more here. I've already gotten 2 together. And so we're going to grab one of our first links. And notice here I've got where the wire ends on the left side and on that side the right side. So there's left on this side and right on this side. So what I did with each of my pieces is I did mirror images on half of them. So instead of doing my swirl to the left around the bead, I did my swirl to the right around the bead. And I did half and half. So here I'm getting ready to go ahead and link on another piece, and as you can see there, I flipped one side over to get this to go through, and then it will come up and be right. So you always want to do it from the opposite side of your piece, so that way it's on top, the right direction. And then I'm going to once again wrap that tail end around my base wire of that loop one full time. So I'm going to grab that piece and tuck it around, and then with my chain nose pliers pull it around nice and tight up against that bead. And then with my flush cutters, I'm going to cut the tail end off as close as I can to that bead. And then tuck it down with my chain nose pliers. And there we go. And now we've got 3 links together. Just like that. It's looking really cute, isn't it? Okay, and so my next one, since that one is on the left side, I find my right-sided one. That's not it. And here it is. And I'm going to go ahead and attach that again from the opposite side. So I'm going to flip this side over, and I'm going to loop through and then flip it back over. Like that. And then I'm going to continue doing what I was doing and wrapping my wraps around the loops and closing them off until I get all 7 of them together. Now, as far as doing the links mirror images, you don't have to do that. You could do them all one direction. I just wanted to do something with a little bit of a different twist to it, to have a little interest, and so I did every other one. So whatever you're comfortable with, then you just do that. That's the great thing about creating your own jewelry. You can make it look whatever way you want to. This is why I enjoy making jewelry. One is because it doesn't need to look like it's manufactured in some sort of manufacturing company. And also, it doesn't have to look like everyone else's. Now I'm going to grab my 16 gauge wire, little piece that is cut at 6 centimeters long, and I'm going to make this my clasp. So first I'm going to start with my round nose pliers, and I'm going to grab about halfway down my pliers, the very end of the wire, making sure that end of the wire is flush with my round nose pliers. And I'm going to wrap that around all the way until it meets with the end of the wire. Like that. And then I'm going to grab my handy dandy round nose and nylon jaw pliers and just snug it up a bit. I just want to make sure that that is touching completely there to make sure we have a nice tight fit. Then I'm going to grab my round nose pliers again and put it right up against that first loop, all the way at the base of my round nose pliers. And then just start to wrap it, and then grab my little handy dandy round nose, flat nose pliers there, the nylon one. And then I'm going to finish wrapping around the base of it, so the largest part of my round nose pliers. And I want to wrap it all the way until the tail of that wire crosses over the middle there, so it's like a little infinity symbol. And then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and grabbing it right about maybe a millimeter from the end of that where it crosses over, and then bend that back up toward the outside like this. Then I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers and just straighten that out. I kind of want a nice little sharp bend there, like that. And then we're going to cut off the excess on this. So I'm just going to cut it so it's only about maybe a centimeter, not a centimeter, a millimeter from the end there. There we go. And there you have a cute little clasp. And as you can see, it's pretty sharp end there. So I'm going to grab my cupper. Can I say that 10 times fast? And I'm going to put that onto the end of the wire and just round it over. That's what cup burrs do. They round that end of the wire over so that it's not sharp, jagged edges. It won't catch on things or be less likely to catch on things. So there you can see it's nice and rounded and not sharp. And I'm just checking it there, making sure it feels like it's nice and smooth, and it is. And I'm going to adjust that, make sure it's all lined up. And you can see how nice and rounded that is from all angles. And there's the completed clasp. Now I'm going to grab my 18 gauge copper wire so that we can make the jump ring for the clasp to attach to. So I'm going to grab the end of this and my mandrel, the 5mm crochet hook mandrel, and I'm going to wrap this around the mandrel at least one full time. And then once I get it where I need to, I can take it off the mandrel. And I'm going to grab my flush cutters and cut the jump ring off of this spool. So with the flush side facing the majority of the jump ring, I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to flip my flush cutters over and cut the other side flush so that both sides of my jump ring have flush cuts on them. There you can see the completed jump ring. And now I'm going to take my jump ring and open it. Never pull your jump rings apart out away from each other. You always want to twist them. So here you can see I twist that jump ring open. And then with my closed loop side of the bracelet, I put my jump ring on. And then I'm going to twist it back closed again. So I like to twist it back past and then back to. And what that does is it kind of work hardens that wire. And there you can see it's nice and flush. And back exactly where you want it to be. You can't even hardly tell where it ends. Now with the other side, which is the open loop, I'm going to pop my clasp on there, like so, and then I'm going to wrap my last loop closed. So this time, unlike all the others, I just wrapped around one time. This time I'm going to wrap it twice around. Since this is attaching our clasp, I want to ensure a nice tight closure on this. So there, I went around once, and I'm going to go around 2 times. So I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to kind of aid in that process, because it gets kind of hard to pull that little tiny bit of wire all the way around just with your fingers. As you can see, I'm going to snug it right up against there, and once I get all the way around, I'm going to tighten down my loops and make sure they're lying side by side. Whoop. There we go. Now I can press them down there. And then I'm going to take my flush cutters and cut it as flush as possible. And I kind of half cut through there, so I had to grab my chain nose pliers and just kind of bend it off. I didn't want to have to try to cut through again and accidentally cut the other wire. So now I'm going to snug all that up with my chain nose pliers. Make sure everything's tucked in nice and neat. There was still a bit of the end of the wire coming out there, so I went ahead and flush cut a little bit more. And there we have it. All nice and neat. And the bracelet is now complete. If you guys like this bracelet, please let me know in the comments below. Any type of comment is good, so whether you didn't, whether you did, tell me the reason why. I would sure love to hear your feedback. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I sure enjoyed making it. And I hope that you all are staying warm wherever you are. I realize some of you are not in the US or in warmer climates, but we are freezing here in the United States right now. You Canadians, I don't know how you do this all the time, or those of you who live in other cold type climates. But I'm a Texan and I'm freezing. I don't like the cold. So we're trying hard to stay warm here. Stay warm, stay safe. We'll see y'all the next time.